The Mystical Emergence podcast is for mature audiences and entertainment purposes only and should never be used over sound medical advice. In this episode, Dr. Robert Morse's Herbal Health Club. And now, here are your hosts, Mystic and the Wizard.
A pioneer in the field of natural health with over 45 years of knowledge and experience, Dr. Robert Morse, author of the Detox Miracle Sourcebook, Raw Foods and Herbs for Complete Cellular Regeneration, joins us today. Welcome.
Good to be here.
What got you interested and excited about this field of study?
It's interesting. It goes way back to when I was 20 years old. I was building my first house by hand. I wanted to tackle building a house by hand, and I was living on the beach, and I needed a carpenter, and I hired this guy, and every day he would bring a lunchbox full of raw foods, fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. And here I'm probably eating McDonald's. Who knows, you know. And so I'm kept looking at that going, why are you just eating just fruit and stuff? Because I always loved fruit, but I'm an old farm boy from Indiana, right? So he said, well, read this book. And I think it was one of the natural hygienic books, probably one of Herbert Shelton's books. Mm-hmm. It just made total sense. You know, what animal cooks their food before they eat it? And, you know, logical questions like that. And it's just like, yeah, I wonder. And then I was like you, fighting a little weight here and there, you know, and I'm going, and this sounds I got to try it. Mm-hmm. And then from there on, then it just, you know, took off. It just really just made a lot of sense. And then I got into fruitarian thinking and stuff like that because then it's obvious that we're frugivores and everything just started making sense. And so
we were talking off air about my weight issue, and I love that he said, you're fighting a little weight issue. Yeah, I'm a little weight issue, like, I don't know, 30 pounds. I'm fighting a little weight
That's
issue.
a little. You know,
yeah, well, it's true in the grand scheme of things.
I've had 800-pounders in my clinic.
Okay.
Wow.
So, that is a lot.
So with someone that does have that kind of weight to lose, like, I know the detox process can be really harsh for someone who's storing that much toxin. So how do you go about doing that? Like, do you have to start really gentle and work up to
when you're very large like that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously difficult to do 100% raw with someone like that. And sometimes getting rid of all meat is difficult. So we just come down, titrate slowly with them. We try to get them the fruit in the morning to break that fast from the night before, and we try to get them into salads and then throw them a little cooked food, things like that, because realistically when you're that large, difficult to just suddenly change, and then you're used to putting away some food and the types of food, because you're full of fungus when you're that large. Right. And so you crave the cheeses and the breads and all the fungal foods. So you just work them off of that. And then with the herbs, I'm going in and getting rid of the fungus that way. I'm enhancing the function of the tissues of their body. And so, you know, slowly at a time, I think around 800 pounds was the heaviest man I've ever had. I got him around about 500 pounds, and then I didn't see him anymore. But he was really focused. Tried to do 100% raw, but very difficult.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Can you expand more for our listeners when you say fungus? Because I know a lot of people are going to think of mushrooms. So can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, the fungal family includes warts, moles, fungal involvements. People see it on their nails all the time, their toenails or their fingernails yellow and stuff like this. But it's part of the community of breaking down chemistry. So it's involved in fermentation, where bacteria is more involved in putrefaction. So when you look at a piece of bread or cheese, that's already a fermented food. And we talk about it making beer, you know, adding yeast and stuff like that. That's a whole family. And when you have a lot in you, and you particularly see that in today's world where we're used to complex sugars, sucrose, maltose, you know, like breads and candies and stuff like that, that's more sugar than the body can metabolize. So then you bring in the little creatures to help you. And so you get full of fungus. And a lot of people drink beer and stuff like this. And so they start getting a lot of fungal problems in them. Mm-hmm. And so they crave those foods. And it's difficult for them to go all raw because they have this craving that's not really theirs. And so you have to go after that a little bit.
Right. So it's like the fungus or parasite or whatever it is, like really actually controls what you want to eat.
Your desire, absolutely.
I spoke when we did one of our first episodes on cleansing the body, and I know when I have to like do some kind of cleanse or something, when all of a sudden I'm craving sugar, because I'm like not even a candy eater, and all of a sudden I'll start thinking like, oh, I got to stop and get some candy, and I'm just like, wait, no.
Yeah,
like there's something going on here. That ain't me.
That's when the fungus gets a little heavy in there, you know. So a lot of people blame fungus on cancer and all this crap, but not really. It's involved in fermentation. You know, it's birth, life, and death. And so we always have the microbe community helping us with that process. And so medical doctors, they don't understand the process of bacteria, and they like to kill them, and that's something you never want to do. But they blame the microbe community on everything, and it's secondary to the problems.
On your YouTube channels, you talk a lot about the acidic body and acid.
Yeah.
How, is that the same, or is that a whole different other thing that's happening?
A whole different other thing.
So maybe could you talk about the acidic body?
Well, fungus does leave uric acid as part of its byproducts of breaking down chemistry. So when you take a look at life, it's very simple. You only have two sides to it, really. You know, I go back to Star Wars and Luke, and he's driving his spaceship, and his master's going, "Trust the Force, Luke, trust the Force." And I'm going, which side? Yeah. You know, because in creation, you have duality, you have two sides. So in chemistry, you see two sides. There's not 10 sides to chemistry. There's only two. So when you look at all the elements and the compounds and all the forms and everything, they're made of these two sides of chemistry. So you have the base and the acid side of chemistry, the only two sides. And if I was to equate that to gender, the alkaline side or the base side is more feminine in nature. Healing, anti-inflammatory, antacid, electrolytes, hydrating. The other side of chemistry is more the male, the aggressive, the acid, the corrosive side, the dehydrating side. And so when you look at the body and the way it metabolizes food, all things break down into acids, because that's how things decay back to the elements again, and then back to the atom structures, atomic structures again.
So it's really like having a balance rather than trying to like label something good or bad, because it's like you said, like the medical industry is always going after bacteria, like bad or something. So it's really just finding a balance in that, because it's actually a natural part.
It is a natural balance. And in yin and yang, we think of 50-50. But if this world was 50-50, it would be very difficult to live in a 50% world of acid, 50% alkali. That's why blood is a dominant on the base or alkaline side. It creates life at a better level, more hydrated, more mobility, everything else. Because when you get more acidic, that's when you get decay. You see the breaking down of tissue or cells. That's how you get a cell to turn into a cancer or an atypical cell. It's through the acid side of chemistry. And it's just agglomerative. This is why you see hardening of the body, stiffness. That's why you see tissue breakdown, tumors forming, things like this.
So how would one go about like trying to keep their bodies on the more alkaline side to prevent things like inflammation, cancer, all of the...
Well, it's funny when you talk about that, because foods fall in the same category. Foods either leave an acid ash when you consume them and break them down, or they leave an alkaline ash. Well, man loves acid ash foods, and those are the proteins, your grains, your beans, your dead animals, your pasteurized dairies. So we eat a lot of acid ash foods. Well, the World Health Organization has mentioned that how proteins are linked to colon cancer. Well, why? And that goes back to it leaves an acid ash. Whenever you leave an acid ash, that means that ash is absorbed into the blood. Medical doctors think bicarbonate neutralizes all that, and they're crazy. So then better universities are talking about the calcium buffering system. So you see that when you eat a lot of acid ash foods, it starts stripping the body of calcium. Because if you acidify the blood, you've got about 3 minutes to live and you're a dead duck. So the body has to pull electrolytes into that blood to bring that balance from being too acidic. And so calcium is the electrolyte of choice. So that's when you start to see the loss of bone, connective tissue, that sort of thing,
I have so many things connecting in my head right now with just like why, like I constantly see people on a daily basis that have mass dehydration. No matter how much water I drink, I can't get hydrated. Right. So this is going to come from acidity in the foods that they're eating. And just the whole thing with, people are always like, oh yeah, drink milk to help with osteoporosis. And it's like, well, we consume more dairy products than any other nation, and we have the highest osteoporosis rate. So apparently it's not about drinking milk that doesn't even have the right calcium for the body anyway.
Well, when you're talking about pasteurized milk, it actually leaches calcium from you.
Right.
So it's just such an oxymoron about the milks. We lost a good Surgeon General by C. Everett Koop. He mentioned that milk probably is not too good for humans, and then they fired him. So, and then Dr. Spock talked about about how milk is bad for children and things like this. Raw milk from the mother, okay for about 6 months to a year, but babies now are so bad with acidosis, and mother's milks are so acidic from their bodies being acidic that, we put babies on fruit right off. But when you think about it, all food, no matter whether it's fruits, berries, melons, vegetables, all break down into acid ash in the body during metabolism. We're talking about in digestion, initially, it can be an alkaline ash or an acid ash. Now, that's absorbed right into the blood. But all foods do leave an acid residue after they're combusted or metabolized, even breathing oxygen. Mm-hmm. Whenever you see the utilization of chemistry, call it metabolism, whatever, you're going to see acids being spun off of the Krebs cycle and all these cycles. Ascorbic acid is a good example. It's a wonder. It's not a wonder vitamin. It is ascorbic acid. So people are taking it intravenously for cancer and stuff like that, and then they're getting hardening of the arteries and things like that from it. You're using an acid to treat an acid condition, and so it becomes insane when you realize that chemistry only has two sides of it. And if you want to pull yourself out of dehydration, for example, if you're a runner, activity of muscles creates a lot of lactic acid, correct? Mm-hmm. Well, how do you counter that? You consume electrolytes. Right. That then brings that acid into balance. So Gatorade. Well, the problem with Gatorade is Gatorade has a pH hotter than Coke. Coke has a 3 pH. Coke, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, 3 pH basically. It's the same pH as metabolic waste. When you feel pain in your body, that's 3 pH.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now, when you mean pain like soreness, like working
soreness, stiffness, tightness, or when you feel actually joint pain and things like that, that's around 3 pH. Take a sip of Coke and feel the burn. Mm-hmm. That's 3 pH. And if you talk to people that's highly acidic, what they feel in their body is burning because acids burn you. As a matter of fact, if you have endometriosis as a female, it'll weld your uterus right to the bowel wall.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, highly acidic.
Wow.
So acid bad. That's what I'm getting.
Acid? Yeah, if you're going to do that. Acid's bad.
I got the message.
Okay. There's some minor acids that are great. Minor acids would be estrogen, testosterone, aldosterone. Those are minor acids. Mm-hmm. Those pHs are more close to 5. When you start coming down to 3, you're getting burned. You're going to be in trouble. So then the medical doctors, not understanding that, give you chemotherapy, which is the pH of 1.5 to 2.
Oh, my God.
Which is 10 to 50 times hotter than the acid that's actually damaging the cells. So they just don't get it, and this is why the survival rate is very low with that.
So what foods then would you recommend? I don't even have to go what drinks, because I know what drinks you don't recommend.
Yeah.
But what foods would you, what kind of a diet, what type of diet to keep the acidic level down?
Okay,
low,
so
right?
most vertebrates, whether you're a frugivore, an omnivore, a herbivore, most of these animals consume a high carbohydrate diet. Those are going to be your fruits, your berries, and your melons. And some of the misinformation is like the grizzly bear, all right? National Geographic was going to do a big story on the grizzly bear and the great carnivore. Well, the grizzly bear isn't a carnivore, it's an omnivore. But they call it a carnivore, right? Misinformation. So by the time the show was done, they showed that a grizzly bear's diet is 65% sagegrass, 14% berries, tubers, and other things, and only about 7% protein. And of that, most of it was the skin, which is high fat for storage for carbon in the winter. So when you really look factually, you look at the facts of things, you start to find things a lot different than what we have been taught and believe in,
The thing that I wanted to actually ask you about regarding like fruit. So my big stink, I guess, about grocery store fruit is the fact that everything is so hybridized. The majority of the fruit you find in the store isn't even real fruit. It's like a hybridized version of something else found in nature. I used to always be able to find seeded grapes, and those were the ones that I'd buy because that had there's a lot of good things in the seed of the fruit, and so eating the skin, the fruit, the seed. So I even have that concept with watermelon: skin, fruit, seed. Like it, when you have fruit in whole, it actually has like perfection, and it won't go crazy on your blood sugar. It won't, what everybody says fruit does. What can someone do now that, I haven't seen seeded grapes or watermelon in the store in probably 2 years. And it's becoming harder and harder unless I find my neighbor that has a garden or grows their own grapes.
It becomes which is better. We're in the bottom line because, we're well known for what we do, pulling people with MS out of wheelchairs and people with tumors. You've talked about a case yourself, but not difficult to do, pulling tumors out of people and correcting that. And we've done that on store-bought fruit a lot of times because it's hard to get organic, and then, like you said, it's hard to get seeded. I just say it's an educational process of getting farmers to understand and take pride in their food, because farmers have lost that. Farmers work from the Monsanto concept of yield, because we were farmers. And so farmers were sold on the concepts of having more yield. So I'll give you an example of that. As farmers started using more fertilizers, they started getting more yield initially, and then the yield started going the other way. So we had 200 acres in Christmas trees. And by the time we were done, we're talking about maybe 8 years, but before we cleared all that out. And then my dad was going to heavily fertilize it. And I said, why would you fertilize it? And he said, well, because the trees just strip the land. I said, no, the trees give back. So for some reason, he listened to me and he plowed all the stumps under and all that and planted corn. He said, I haven't seen a yield like that since I was a grown-up boy, and he was in his 70s then. So it is just how you take care of the soil and things, and realize that trees give back.
Right.
When you look at being a fruitarian and looking at the amount of people you can feed per acre, the fruit is always the better way to go. Fruit and berries are always the way to go. Vegetables, less so, but then we're not herbivores. So there's a big argument on all that. It doesn't matter to me if you eat a salad or not. But when you look at the physiology of the Homo sapien, he's a frugivore through and through. But like you said, quality of food. Well, that's what we all are now. We're trying to seek good food,
yeah,
and it's
difficult.
It's stressful. It's discouraging, especially when you want to do well. You want food to taste so good. It's difficult for sure. No problem.
Yeah, I know an older gentleman that has said to me numerous times, when I retire, I'm going to move to South America. I'm like, have you been there? Because, good quality of life, and there's real food. The fruits and vegetables are real. I'm like,
yeah.
And what do we got here?
Well, we have a lot of our clients down in Costa Rica, and we have a little healing center down there. And that's the thing, the islanders. Well, the islanders are always the longest lived. Mm-hmm. We've looked at that for years, and I've had in my office over 100 years old, walking in without wheelchairs and being vibrant and stuff like this. And whenever you interview islanders, like Dave just came back from one of the islands down there, and they all were 120 years old on the island.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how does your membership health club work, and what do you offer? Tell us a little bit about that. Well,
we have a club that only because for some privacy purposes. We have a world out there that's pretty invasive in a lot of ways. This government has tried to take away the rights and the sovereignty of individuals. And, of course, if you're into that, I can speak for hours on the law and sovereignty and that sort of thing as well. So it's a form of protection because the FDA is radical. They're obviously pro-pharmaceuticals. They definitely hate the natural health people. Our lab is always visited by the FDA monthly and given all kinds of crap about our herbs and stuff. And, it's a sad thing, but it exists out there. And then medical doctors are into diseases. They created that ridiculous concept. And so if you're out there in the natural health field treating diseases, you get your butt in trouble. And that's a lot of the problems in making claims. So it's a big deal. And this offers privacy, and it's free. You just join a club like you would a neighborhood club. But there we have a store, and we have all the information. I'm a science thinker. Of course, I'm a chemist. So anytime I can get good studies, I'm going to put them up there. Truthful studies, not bogus crap. We're going to put them up for you so you can get to see what really is the truth about vaccines or cancers and the treatments of and things like that.
Can you talk a little bit about the theory of disease you mentioned in the medical industry, and how do you view the medical profession these days?
Well, I spent a lot of years in emergency medicine. So I spent a lot of years in the ER and a lot of years in nuclear medicine, which, say for what that is. But I've always said medical is totally surgery and emergency medicine, but even in emergency medicine, there's a lot of crap. Like how they treat burns is insane. If you're a burn victim, I can rebuild your skin easy and pull you out of pain. They strip your skin. I mean, they're radical. The concept of diseases is ridiculous, and there's no causative factor. They don't understand any causative factors. It's all autoimmune or pathogens, parasitic, and so they don't have a clue to understanding true chemistry and how that affects the tissue and the function of tissue. And I think the biggest part is they do not understand the lymphatic system. And if you do not understand the sewer system in the human body, you don't understand anything. You're seeing a tumor and wondering, well, we got to treat the cell, the cancer cell or the cell that's damaged or that's dead in the tumor. We're going after those cells. You don't never go after your cells of your body. They're victims. You want to go after the chemistry. You want to go after what's damaging the cells of the human body. And whether you have skin problems, psoriasis or eczema, or you have mumps or measles or crap like that, if you do not understand the lymphatic system, you don't understand why you get those things.
Yeah, I feel like the doctors today, they work on this like blame the organ mentality.
Exactly.
Because like when people come in and they maybe have my gallbladder, I have gallstones, so they're just going to remove the gallbladder. Like, okay, so it's like people are the industry is so quick to jump to remove an organ, a hysterectomy. You're going to take out a woman. Yep. Her womb over issues, hormone issues. You're blaming the organ for something, and people don't even think like this is a radical procedure. This is complete. This is like Frankenscience, where they're going to go in and put you on a table and remove your organs and see if you can function without them. It's like, to me, that's radical, and that is the last thing I would ever do is actually remove an organ. I would see, what am I doing? What is the cause that the organ isn't functioning properly? Because that organ is a victim. You don't pull the victim out. You try and fix what's going on around it.
Well, to your thought there, the kidneys are another level. If you go into dialysis, you see a chart on the wall that says you have an extra kidney, donate one. That's how stupid they are, because you don't have an extra kidney. They don't even know what the kidney's function is for. And if you don't realize the function of the kidneys and why so many people have kidney failure, most deaths are from kidney failure, because the kidneys control the giant sewer system of the human body. We can call it the immune system of the human body, but the lymphatic system is the sewer system. Every house has a kitchen and a bathroom. Nobody uses the bathroom in the kitchen, right? And so does the cells. The cells eat and eliminate waste. It's that simple. And medical doctors can't even understand the simplicity of this. Like the University of West Virginia just found the lymphatic system in the brain 3 years now ago.
Wow.
They didn't even know it existed. Really? I mean, it's the stupidity of that. If you don't know all the body, because in A&P, we have friends that are anatomy, physiology professors and things like that, and they laugh sometimes when medical doctors come off not understanding how the body works in that way.
How would one actually keep the lymphatic system clean? Because this seems like this is the main thing that you have to... Okay, so we talked about the two sides of chemistry, right? The base. Right. Well, the blood is predominantly the base side. How does the body get rid of acids? Because if you dump all these acids back into the blood, it can kill you. And then that stresses the blood, and then the draw of calcium out of connective tissue. So you see aneurysms, hernias, and you go on and on and on and miles about that. Bruising easy and all this. So there's another system, though, designed for acids. And that system is a lipid system, cholesterol-based system. That's why people all have all the cholesterol problems. The lymphatic system is a cholesterol-based system. And so lipids are the best way to neutralize acids. It's like Big Mamas, because acids will burn electrolytes all day long. But you get lipids in there, it will actually sit on an acid a lot better than an electrolyte will. So this is why, and in a lipid system, you have the syndrome of a tortoise in the hare. The blood moves rapidly around the body, the lymph very slowly. And the more acidic the lymphatic system becomes, the lymph nodes swell, the more you feel tight and stiff, and then the more damage to the tissue. Well, it invokes what you just said earlier, the inflammatory process. Inflammation is a natural process of the human body. It's an inflammatory response. The inflammatory response in the human body includes what we talked about: edema, cholesterol, calcium, histamines, interleukins. These are just responses by the body to acidosis.
Well, you talked about the lymph system a second ago, about as far as the movement, and it's slow. So how does it work? Does it move on its own? Do you move?
Well, think about in movement. That's a big way. Remember how people they break an arm or something that's in a cast for a long time and it's real stiff and tight? They have to move. Absolutely. Your lymph system moves better when you're moving your body. That's why the fruit diet is key when you have tumors and things, because it is astringent. And astringent is how we help move the lymph system. You know, when I was doing in nuclear medicine, we were doing stress tests. If you were in a wheelchair and couldn't walk, then we had chemicals to help you walk in affecting the heart and increasing all that activity. As bad as that that is. And so fruits do the same thing. It hydrates, which creates the opposite. When you have agglomulation or stiffness, you hydrate that, it'll open that door up. And you just use one side of the chemistry to treat the other side, basically.
Do you have specific herbal formulas that you make or herbs that you recommend that actually help the lymph system?
I do, because in nature, herbs weren't created for diseases. That's man's little brainchild. Herbs are for tissues. So I see herbs in this sort of way. You got herbs for every cell in the body. You got herbs just for kidneys. You got herbs for endocrine gland tissue. You got herbs for lung tissue. You got herbs for everything. But you also have herbs for blood. And you also have herbs for the lymphatic system. The herbs for the lymphatic system, they're aggressive, very aggressive. But they're like bloodroot. It'll pull a tumor right out of your body. Mm-hmm. I've pulled breast tumors out for 40 years now. We pull tumors out of livers. We pull tumors out of about everywhere. But then the FDA doesn't like black salve and the bloodroot salves and things like this. But that's how powerful nature is. Don't ever mistake botanicals. Pharmaceuticals are all suppressive in nature. And if you listen to the commercials, half of them have fatal events tied to them. Like we're talking about fungus. Most of your antifungals have fatal events tied to them.
Yeah, I noticed that. I remember I saw a commercial one time to get rid of toenail fungus, and literally it said one of the side effects could be death. I'm like...
Exactly.
So
Lamisil. Naturally Lamisil has fatal events tied to it.
Like literally to get rid of toenail, I'm like, they should just be drinking some Paw d'Arco tea and stop eating sugar. Well,
remember, what kills one creature can kill another, and including your cells. Mm-hmm. Nature and the botanicals are more selective, but some of those herbs are very toxic at high dosages. But that's where being smart and all that comes into play, But still, understanding the hydration is vital to that system, and understanding that the kidneys are the eliminative organs along with the skin. So your skin is your third kidney. So your right kidney drains your lymphatic system from the top of your head to your little toe on the right side of your body. Your left kidney drains the left side. You don't have an extra kidney. And so vital to understand that when you sweat, your skin eliminates gases more than anything, but also metabolic acids as well. So when you're not eliminating from the skin, what do you see? Rashes, psoriasis, eczema. Easy to cure those things. Not as diseases, because they're not diseases. They're the retention of acids in the human body.
Well, that gets me to my next question. How do things like shingles, where do they come from? I guess what I'm asking is, what are shingles, and can they ever get rid of them, or do you have to just deal with them with the rest of your life?
No, that's a good question. You don't have to deal with anything. You can fix everything. That's ridiculous. But when you look at shingles, I know, when you're looking at shingles, though, you're looking at weakened myelin sheaths. And now you're dealing with herpes. Now you're dealing with virals. And virals attack, they're proteins. And proteins attach to weaknesses. And that's what you see all the time. And you have to just, the only way to get rid of viral loads is detox. You never want to take antivirals. That doesn't work. HIV, all of that, those are easy to get rid of.
So the shingles are a reaction to something that your body...
A weakness of the myelin sheath, a weakness of the autonomic nervous system. And that comes from weak adrenal glands. And in genetics, when you start weakening the adrenals, you start lowering neurotransmitter production, you start weakening the myelin sheath, you start losing the autonomic response. From that, then you see the COPD chain, asthma, and you gave me a good question about ADD and ADHD and all this. All those children have adrenal gland issues where the autonomic is weakened, and then thimerosal or some mercury derivative can throw them right into either seizures or into ADD or hyperactivity. And that's what neurotoxicity can do to you.
Yeah, so if we can expand on that, on the ADD and HDAD, so many of us, in the society have it. Or are
labeled.
Labeled that. Or it touches our lives through our children, through our grandchildren. What is it? How do you deal with it? Do you just deal with it?
Well, no, you can't deal with it.
Yeah, you have.
We have them climbing our ceilings in our office. It's. When you get the extreme cases of that is seizures. Some people that are vaccinated, I'll say the extreme is death. I don't know, recently in Samoa, after the MMR, 2 kids died from it. I have a friend whose baby died the next day from MMR. It is killing kids. But also, the next down would be seizures, constant seizures of children. I can give you tons of cases where we pull them out of seizures. But ADD and ADHD, lucky if you just get that. And what it is when you start introducing neurotoxicity to the body, that then exacerbates or weakens the autonomic even more. The neurotoxicity. And you have to clean that neurotoxicity out and strengthen. Clean and strengthen, you will find when you examine all pathways to wellness and health and vitality, those two words come into mind. Cleaning is detoxification. You have to remove virals out of the body. You have to remove neurotoxic excitotoxins and things like this. But at the same time, you're strengthening the cells that comprise the human body. Because think about how simple the human body is. The human body is comprised of basically 100 trillion cells, give or take a few trillion, right? Then you have spaces around every cell in your body, whether it's bone or what. You have spaces around them. Those are called interstitial spaces. And then what's in the spaces? The two major fluids of the human body, blood and lymph. What's interesting is blood is only about 20% of that interstitial space. 80% is lymph. Well, why would the interstitial spaces around every cell in your body be predominantly lymph for? So when you start to look at the simplicity of that, and you realize the blood brings the goodies to the cell, and there's no eliminative organs hooked to the blood system, but there is to the lymphatic system. Why? Sewage. So take a house, all right? You got a house, right? And then you go to the bathroom, you dump your waste into the toilet, right? You flush the toilet. Basically, your waste go to a septic tank. All right? Call that septic tank a lymph node, because that's just what it is. It's a septic tank. In that septic tank is full of bacteria. What if you kill the bacteria in your septic tank? What's going to happen to your house? It's going to back up because nothing's breaking down your solids. Right. So after a while, you're going to back up. Well, that's what medical doctors do. They kill the bacteria in your body, and now you don't have the bacteria to break down these 3 pH acids, because in your lymph nodes, your bacteria break down these 3 pH metabolitic acids and bring them up to about 6. So you're not peeing on your knees, right? So vital. Then you have macrophages. These are cells that break down damaged cells. So a cell that's damaged is supposed to be taken to the lymph nodes where the macrophages break them down, and then all that is eliminated out either through the skin or predominantly through the kidneys. When that doesn't happen, the kidneys quit filtering, the lymph nodes swell, and the sewage backs right up to the house. That's when we call that inflammation.
So how does the protocol look for getting rid of that? What is
Well, we go after the kidneys and the kidney filtration and hydration. So we start bringing hydration to the body, getting the kidneys to filter. So here's a test for you. Pee in a jar, and if it's clear, your urine is clear, doesn't matter the color. If it's clear, you're in trouble.
Really?
Yeah. A good example, stool in the toilet, flush the toilet, and run out to your sewer pipes, and if only water comes out, what would you think?
I would think that would be bad.
You got a blockage somewhere, right? Well, that's what's going on, because your urine should be full of sediment. Snow, you do the little Santa Claus things and you shake them up and you see all the little snow. Your urine should be full and cloudy like that. And if it ain't, you're in trouble.
I don't know if I'll ever see those Santa Globes ever again.
That's right. And that's just part of the big problem. Man has had so many acid ash foods that it's damaged the kidneys and colon. And the World Health Organization is fixated on the GI tract that way. But the kidneys are another area that gets highly damaged on high protein diets. And this is what happens. This is why you see kidney failure in all the bodybuilders. And we work with Mr. Olympia and Antoine, who trains Mr. Olympia. We work with all these guys. And let me tell you, kidney failure abounds. And then RA and all the arthritis has come in. And you just go on down a long road of hell.
So what herbs would you recommend?
Well, we use herbs for the kidneys. We use herbs for the adrenal glands on top of the kidneys. Those are the endocrine glands. We go after all your endocrine glands. We go after the GI tract and clean it up. We clean the liver and stuff like that up too, but we're after that lymphatic system. So we go after the lymph system aggressively.
You mentioned RA, and I heard something, I think, just yesterday, and correct me if I'm wrong, they don't know what causes it.
Yeah, we're in a bad case right now. It's rheumatoid arthritis, for those that want to know what that is.
Correct.
And it's just high acidosis, and you see it particularly in the joints where the body's been so acidic, it's leaching the calcium out of the joint, but it's depositing it on the outside. Because when calcium meets an acid, it turns into a rock. That's why we see bone spurs and all these things like this, because phosphorus and calcium creates bone matrix. Well, on the acid side of chemistry, you're more on the phosphorus side of chemistry, which leaches the calcium to bring balance. So that's what you see, a high acidic body. And you always see kidney failure and weak adrenal glands, low steroids, all this sort of thing. So we go in and fix all that and pull them right out of it. It's all curable. I mean, there is nothing you can't cure. Now, if you're treating diseases as if it's a disease, yeah, it's incurable because you don't know the cause of it or anything. If you understand why that label is used, it doesn't matter location. All diseases are is location, location, location.
Yeah,
Same problem.
It's true. I feel like the medical industry, a lot of times they don't know. So it's like all of a sudden everyone that comes into my shop has rheumatoid arthritis. Everyone has lupus. Everyone has fibromyalgia.
Exactly.
And to me, it's just blanket terms for things. Just like every veteran they say has Gulf War syndrome. They're like super heavy metal toxic from the amount of vaccines they receive and from breathing the sand that they breathe. But they just get these blanket terms like, oh, and we can't help you, but here's 20 pills you can take to alleviate your symptoms.
You hit it really right on the head. Lupus, Lyme's, fibromyalgia, the arthritises, they're all different levels. There's several levels, and chronic levels of acidosis is what you're talking about. And that's systemic by then. So you're head to toe, you're in pain. And this is just chronic acidosis. And you fix it the same way you would fix a minor acute or subacute level of that. Same way. Once you get the kidneys filtering and the body hydrated, these acids start coming out. All the symptoms. I've had them where you've had Lou Gehrig's and MS where they have brain lesions and they're mottled and their hands are, they're going back into the fetal position. We get them straightened right back out and up and walking and talking again. And it's just, you're rebuilding on the other side of chemistry. Medical doctors use the acid side of chemistry to treat acid conditions. Most pharmaceuticals are acidic. So it is ridiculous. Even some of their steroids are acidic. Acetates are tied to them, things like this. You're not going to get yourself well with that. It might make the symptom go away temporarily, but all you're doing is suppressing it.
Yeah, I had actually a couple people come into my shop where the doctor told them they have precancer cells in their face and they want to burn off the first layer. I was like, listen to what you're telling me. I was like, please go research before you decide to burn your face off. Yeah. If a doctor can convince you this is a normal procedure to take a torch to your face, that, to me, I was just in a whole other world while these people were telling me this, because I'm just literally the medical industry has convinced people to burn off their own faces. That's just insane to me.
All right, so think about this. All right, so you're a cell in the liver. What damages you? You're a cell in the liver, you have spaces around you, and those spaces have blood and lymph. Now, the blood is alkaline. Alkaline chemistry at a 7.4 to 8 or 9 doesn't hurt anything. Matter of fact, hydration makes everything fluid. It's anionic. It makes you feel good. Right? So there's no damage the blood has to your cells unless it can't get to a cell. And then you get ischemia, and then you get all these things. And, of course, then a cell's going to die. However, what then damages the cell? There's only one other fluid, guys. There's only one other fluid that deals with metabolitic acids. In other words, a cell eats and poops. So when a cell eliminates its waste outside of itself, that is acidic, and that's what that lymph system's for. It's when a cell can no longer eliminate its intracellular waste that it starts to damage itself inside of itself. The retention of acids is just like the retention of acids in the body. It starts damaging the cells, or the inflammatory process begins. When it's intracellular, that's when you start this road to atypical and then to the cancer cell, which is just a damaged cell. But they got everybody freaked out with the word cancer that, oh my God, we got to treat the cells. You can't treat the cell. You got to treat what causes the damage to the cell. All you have is a cell sitting there with interstitial spaces around it and two fluids around it. So if you're going to blame something, you got to blame one of those two fluids, and you generally don't blame the blood. Yeah. It only leaves you one left.
Can you talk to us about our diets and allergic reactions? For example, what's the difference between a reaction we get from a bee sting as opposed to an allergic reaction we have to something we eat? Or is the body going through the same process with those two things?
Well, you do have your anaphylactic shocks, and most of those have really gnarly lymphatic systems and weak adrenals where the steroids are low and all that, and you have to be mindful of that. But a lot of people get hives and things like this during detox, and that just shows you how bad the lymphatic systems are. Mumps, measles, and they're going after this big thing with all the measles and mumps and stuff like that. Take your vaccinations, which just exacerbates everything, and they're using live vaccines. So all these people, what with the mumps or measles here recently, they were blaming them unvaccinated children when really it was their vaccines causing them because they use live virals. It's like when polio, they introduced the polio vaccine. They were using live virals. So polio went up 675 or more %. So then they freaked out and changed because you're introducing live vaccines or live virals into a body that is toxic. And so then virals start taking hold and then you start having serious problems. So it's your weaknesses that get you. And it's your state of acid or state of chemistry imbalance. So one book was written called The Inner Terrain, and that's what it is, your inner terrain. When your sewer system's backed up, you can see everything that you see, any skin problems, mumps, measles, any of these things like that. Get your inner terrain cleaned up, get your lymphatic system cleaned up, and you can't catch anything because there's nothing to catch. Right. You're clean inside, your sewer system isn't backed up, but if your sewer system's dirty,
gonna have some problems. Snow globe with yellow pea.
Yeah.
I do not want to buy a snow globe with yellow pea. That's on the list right there.
We just live in an insane world in that level of thinking. The medical community is the number one, I hate to say this, because I like to be polite, but the number one killer of humans on the planet is the medical community. And of course, when you look at the amount of people they maim, it has skyrocketed. Millions and millions worldwide each year. How does a health modality kill that many people? And it's not a health modality. In the natural health field, I don't think there's one person that dies worldwide a year, and if there is, it's one.
My biggest hang up with the Western medical is really that they don't have like a holistic like WHO out, like, because it's there, you have emotions, spirit, there's everything, and that's why I have always gravitated so much towards herbs. And just like, so my husband's up north right now, so he wild foraged me some nettle, and he dried it for me, sent it down here. Drinking that nettle, even versus the nettle I have in bulk at the shop. I mean, because you taste the essence of the forest in that. You taste like, I tasted my husband's love picking it for me while he was getting stung. Like, but it's like that has a whole energy behind it when it's entering into my body versus a pill.
That's the ultimate. And we only have like one formula that are from fresh herbs, because the problem coming in when you're dealing with it worldwide is having herbs that are ready to eat and available for formulas all year long, because the harvesting of certain herbs are at different periods of time. So it becomes more complicated than that, although the ultimate is in your terrain where you live is pick and eat. Understand your botanical of your environment where you live and eat that way. I mean, and the same thing with eating your foods. When man migrated to the northern climates, that changed the whole matrix of things, because man is a tropical species, not a paleo species, not even close. That's more misinformation. So as a tropical species, that's the type of foods that we eat that we require. It's like primates. They're not northern, although some of these mountain gorillas are forced up in the mountains now because they're burning the lowlands, like you see the fires now, for farmland.
Correct.
So they're burning the rainforest and all this stuff, and so where's the animals go? Higher up into the mountains, and it throws them into an unnatural setting. Sad stuff, but, it's just man and his greed and man his lack of understanding. And to me, the medical community is a big part of this, because they push high protein diets. That's the first thing you want to get away from is high protein. And now naturopaths push that. You want to get away from protein, period.
We've heard a lot about the high protein diets and how it's detrimental to your lifespan. If you could expand a bit about it, because people get, and myself included, I'm like, am I eating enough protein? But the body probably knows.
Well, first of all, your body can't use protein. And if you look at the different groups of people on the planet that had high protein diets, like the Eskimos, when they first were, I hate to use the word discovered, that breaks me another way, but when let's say when the Eskimos were first discovered, their average age was only 45, 46 years old, same as back in Jesus' time. Man wasn't long-lived. Whenever you see high-protein diets, they are not long-lived, and any study that shows that is bogus. Your islanders, even the China study showed a better study than that, but there's even better studies yet that show that those that are islanders have a far longer life, and I've been, like you said, 45 years now, almost 50 in the field. So I see people worldwide. We don't have like the States anymore, just that. I have every country in the world that we work with, and you get to see their lifestyles, their diets, and just what they suffer from. And it's amazing. But it always comes back to the islanders are much more healthy by far. But we're a frugivore species. We don't even look like a herbivore. And yet you hear all these people pushing vegetables and stuff like that. So years ago, I used to fast on carrot juice. Let me offer you this. Do a 10-day carrot juice fast and then do a 10-day grape fast, and you tell me which was more beneficial to you.
I'm not going to tell you because I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you right now.
I want to try it.
And back then, the carrot juice was the thing. I fasted lots of times on carrot juice. Mm-hmm. And then when I realized that we're more frugivores, I went into like a 6-month on navel orange fast. But I was living in the woods in my Volkswagen van then. I was a hermit, you know. And
that's my dream right there. The goals, me and my husband's goal.
Well, you can get out there. Staying in the body is the trick.
So what do you, fruit gets put down a lot for people who have blood sugar issues or hypoglycemia and stuff. So what is like the truth behind that then? And like how would somebody who is struggling with blood sugar issues be able to eat fruit? And
I have a pet answer for that one.
Okay.
Fruit tastes sweet, like water feels wet. Yet water is only 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 of oxygen. Fruit sugar is fructose. It is a natural, simple sugar. When you talk about sugars that are complex, like dextrose, maltose, these are grain sugars, or sucrose, now you're talking about complex sugars. The body has to have a sugar. Sugar's carbon, and we use carbon for fuel. Without carbon, you're a dead duck. We burn carbon. We don't burn nitrogen for fuel. We don't burn proteins for fuel. When you burn a protein for fuel, this is the analogy. You're stuck up in New Hampshire. The snow is about 6 foot deep. You're in a cabin. You can't get out to even get the wood to burn, so you burn your drapes. You burn your interior wall. I mean, you start burning the furniture, everything you can. And then when you burn everything you can and you still can't get out, you start tearing down the walls, the structure. That's when your body starts turning to protein to burn. So that was Atkins' philosophy. If you want to lose weight, starve your body for a sugar, which is essential. It'll start turning to the fat reserves to break it down into sugars, right? To do that, though, you have to get up onto the protein. Well, the protein's acidic. So then it acidifies you, breaking down fat at that level, creates ketosis, and pretty soon you're in acidosis, ketosis, and death is, a lot of people died under those diets. Ridiculous stuff.
Talk a little bit about, you mentioned earlier the paleo. Can you talk a little bit about the paleo diet? And I've heard, and I don't know if this is correct or not, but I've heard it's like Atkins 2.0. It's a reboot.
Yeah, it is.
That's what I thought when I first heard it. I was like, this sounds like the Atkins diet.
It is, and it did the same thing. In other words, Atkins had so many deaths tied to it and stuff that they went and they said, we need to add fruits and vegetables. We need that. So now the paleo has some fruits and vegetables added to that. There's no way the human structure or anybody that understands chemistry knows that the human body is designed for high protein. Not even omnivores. Matter of fact, one of the problems with your dogs is kidney weakness. All dogs have kidney weakness. Put a dog on a high protein diet, you see the dysplasias, you see short-term lives. Dogs are not designed. They're omnivores. They're not designed. Most omnivores are not designed for high protein diets whatsoever. There's no way. I've always said rabbit crap would be the best food for omnivores there is. Pre-digested aminos. Amino acids are the key, and that comes in your fruit. Anything with form has amino acids. Structure is amino acids, right? Mm-hmm. The simpler the amino acid, the better the hit on the human body. Okay. Because if you eat protein, what happens to the protein in digestion? It has to be broken down through the peptides, polypeptides, and then into the amino acid structures before you can use it.
Your body has to work overtime.
It has to work overtime, and then then a protein is such a complex structure, you need an acid hit initially. That's for the hydrochloric acid and pepsin. You have to have an acid like a wrecking ball to break apart these structures. Where simple structures, you don't need that.
But people that take protein powders or whatever, they see they have seen benefits, but long term, I mean, what's happening to their body?
The only benefits is an artificial sense of strength. Mm-hmm. To pay for that, though, you lose your kidneys, and then you start to see the downside of that one. And in long-term use, like this one bodybuilder, he had to have his whole colon removed from doing that. And then you start to see the colitis and the IBSs and stuff like this. And it's not worth that initial pump or the massive muscles, because pretty soon, I make blends for Mr. Olympia and people like that. So we have muscle-building blends, but they're like alfalfas and things like this. Because we were farmers and we had horses, and I raised horses. If you want to put muscles on a horse, which you really don't need to, but if you wanted to, like barrel racing and stuff like that, you would use alfalfa hay. And then those muscles are so strong, you don't mess with a horse like that.
Well, you touched on that. You and others believe in medicine through nature, but how can someone that has, let's say, and I'm going to probably butcher this, collagenous colitis heal themselves? If I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. Okay, so
first of all, when you have a colitis or you have enteritis, you have gastritis, you have any type of IBS or anything like that, where's the problem? So, all right, so let's say you do an endoscopy or colonoscopy and you sit a scope up your hiney, right? Mm-hmm. You got a camera looking up a garden hose. All right. So you're looking through a canal. You might see a polyp hanging and cut it off and all that. But where's the problem? Interstitially. The problem is always are in the spaces around the cells, because what's in those spaces? Blood and sewer, lymph. So the problem isn't with the cell as colitis. The cell becomes the problem. It's always interstitially. And that from that you have malabsorption, you have everything else going from that. So it's your lymph system. To cure that, you got to fix your lymph system. You can't just throw like mullein or slippery elm or something like marshmallow to heal the mucosa. You got to look what's burning that. I mean, you can change your diet from a acid ash diet, which will help the mucosa, but you've got to look interstitially, and that's the only way to do that is fix the lymph system, go after the kidneys, and that route.
And how does that look? Diet-wise,
Diet-wise
hydration?
is fruits, berries, and melons in my book.
Yeah.
Salad maybe once in a while. And then I go after the kidneys with botanicals, the adrenal glands on top of them. I start getting your kidneys to filter, because if you can't get your kidneys to filter, you're in deep trouble.
And you said when it comes to hydration, basically you think of water, because I think we got the impression that he's not really pro soda. I don't know why I'm thinking that.
You got a Coke here? But here's the thing with water. Water, H2O, is acidic. So hydrogen is the universal atom, but it's acidic. Mm-hmm. So water's a little acidic in its purest form. So like distilled water. So you look for mountain water. You're looking for electrolytes, and that's why I like hydration actually through fruit juices.
So you don't drink a lot of water, I guess,
no.
Maybe. Oh, okay.
Because if you stay hydrated through your diet, you're not thirsty. When you start getting too thirsty, you just had a dehydrating diet, or your meal was dehydrating, and now you've got to hydrate.
Yeah, well, like water that's found in fruit, though, it also has like, I'm gonna use the word intelligence. Like, that's what I want to call it, because you have to think too that everything has essence. So like when I lived in North Carolina or in New York State, like I would go get fresh mountain water, and so like this has certain intelligence of the mountains attached to it, because water collects like data, energy. So when you actually are getting hydrated through your fruit, so now you have something it's working through the fruit. It has intelligence of the fruit.
Well, this sucks to the level that I love, and that's the spirituality of things. Everything has consciousness, or a state of consciousness. Everything comes out of the one. So in duality, you have the one that has divided itself into two. So you have two sides to that. But in reality, everything has a state of consciousness to it, and an awareness to it. All fruits, all vegetables, all herbs have an awareness to it, and it interfaces with the awareness of the cells. I mean, we if you look at it at a much higher level, instead of just at a mundane physical chemical level, you hit it right on the head. There's a consciousness to everything. Why does that herb? And of course, we know plants have awareness. If you ever read Christopher Bird and Tom Tompkins' Secret Life of Plants, it's quite obvious that plants have intelligence. And then recently there was this lady professor who they were going to take bomb-sniffing dogs out of airports because they were only 75% accurate at determining bomb chemicals. And they were going to replace these bomb-sniffing dogs with plants, because her plants were 100% accurate at determining chemicals and the type of chemicals. She could train them to turn colors depending on the type of chemicals they were sensing. So you have to understand, plants are emotional. They understand your emotional needs. If you get mad at a plant, it'll shrivel up. And now you go on and on with experiments to show you that plants have awareness. They understand. They recognize you. But to be in the physical world, you have to come down through the emotional world, the mental world. So everything has a mind to it, even the minerals. Everything has an emotional state to it, including the minerals. And everything has physical form on the physical world. But as soon as you leave your physical form, you still have other forms to deal with, of course.
I am fascinated by iridology or iridology. Can you tell us where it originated and what it is and how it works?
Well, he later became a surgeon, but this Van Pexley, he discovered that when tissue's damaged, it creates markings in the eye. And so from that first understanding, he claimed he caught an owl in a barnyard or something, and his leg broke when he grabbed it. And immediately he was looking at the owl, and this big black dot came at 6 o'clock in the owl's eye, which is the leg area in iridology. So from that humble beginning, he started looking in people's eyes in surgery and things like that, trying to figure out things. And so he came up with this really rough original map of the eye. And then from there, it was more European, of course. Germany hit it real hard. A lot of naturopaths and osteopaths took it on, and it became quite famous. And then Bernard Jensen, who was a good old friend of mine, he was considered, to me, my opinion, the father of iridology, because he really took all these maps through all these years and condensed them down. And there's some very detailed maps of how the eye relates. So to put it simplistically, your nervous system is a communication highway from your cells to the brain. Your brain is the central nervous system. Your nervous system in your body is the autonomic. Its brain is in your stomach solar plexus, and its juice comes from the adrenal glands. But it is the communication highway. It turns on or turns off problems. You mentioned diabetes. You can have you can be a type 1 diabetic, not from the weakened beta cells, but from a neurological weakness to the beta cells. So there's a lot. The nervous system literally is the electrical department. It controls literally everything, but it's a communication highway to the central nervous system. The central nervous system is just in your case, the chakra to the mind, to the mental worlds. And so it's a neat process, but that process includes the optic nerves. So when there's a weakness or the level of lymphatic stagnation or acidosis also shows in the eye. The only thing we have on this planet that shows the condition of your lymphatic system. And so the eye, when you can learn how to read the eye, you can see your genetic weaknesses. You can see where your weaknesses are. I can tell you where you're going to have pain during detox. I can show you where your tumors are, where your lymphatic stagnation is, malabsorption. All of these things are in the eye. Amazing science, and it's easy for even the children to learn.
So I was going to actually kind of bring this up earlier because when you were mentioning colonoscopies and what they're looking at. So when people come in, they're like, oh no, I got blood work, I'm fine. I'm almost like, well, yeah, that's not how you test for something like that. Like, oh, the doctor said my liver was fine. It's like, I don't even think they test right because the way they look at things is not, especially with heavy metals, oh, well, yeah, I peed in a cup, they test it. I'm like, but that's not how you test for heavy metals. They're stored in fat cells to protect your body. So it kind of drives me crazy. So this now, it seems like it would be a very practical and correct way to be able to diagnose someone. So when someone comes in your office, do you, is that what you do? To begin with, you look at their eye to see what's going on? We
do, but we have a worldwide audience and very difficult to come to the clinic worldwide. So we have eyes sent to us by the hundreds about every day.
Oh, wow.
So we teach people how to take their own pictures, and they do a pretty good job with that. So we're able to look at their eye and analyze their, where their problems are. But, after years of doing this, you don't really need their eye. You just tell me what your symptoms are. But a good example for the eye, depression is a great example. People call it a mental health problem. It's not a mental health problem whatsoever. It's a parathyroid weakness. When you don't utilize calcium, you'll get depressed out of that. And a mother who has a parathyroid weakness gets postpartum depressions.
I was just going to ask you this.
Yeah. So you fix a parathyroid. But when you're not utilizing calcium, you see things like prolapsing of skin, wrinkled skins, prolapsing uteruses, bladders. You see connective tissue weaknesses, herniations, aneurysms, bruising easy, all of these things, and they're all very fixable stuff. But that's a parathyroid weakness. So each endocrine gland controls certain parts of the body, and when it's down, you're going to have problems. But there's a link to that, which is called the pituitary, and the eye is a good way to look at that because pituitary will make you short or tall. It can make your monthly cycles as a female irregular. It can create some of these things, but sometimes you can't always tell whether there's a pituitary weakness or not. You can look at blood work and things like that, but keep in mind, blood is only 20 to 25% of interstitial fluid. What's the biggest part of the fluid? The lymph, and they don't have a test for that. Right. The only test for that is looking at protein regurgitations, antigens, things like this, cancer markers, things like that. And that's the only really way. I look at blood work for kidney function, I can tell you, but their markers are ridiculous. Mm-hmm. By the time you have a high level of creatinine in your blood work, you're in serious trouble in the kidneys. Yeah. So you can look at some things. I'm a little chemistry buff, so I like to look at blood work, of course, but very few. Like you said, the most of this is stored lymphatically. So this is why we do hair analysis or right. tissue analysis and stuff like that. It'll be a little more accurate than blood work by far.
Wow.
What you see in the blood, you can accentuate hundreds of times because it's in the lymph.
It's amazing because, you have that, the eye is the seat of the soul, like you can see into someone. So it's a very true thing, and I was going to ask too, and I'm glad that you had brought up the depression because I was going to ask, so apart from just the physical, can you see the spiritual stuff or the emotional stuff that's going on with someone through the eye?
Well, first of all, most people are involved in adrenal weaknesses, and we're at that emotional karmatic level right now. So that's one of the things during detox you're going to experience is your emotions. Stored past experiences, past life experiences that you don't know consciously are going to come out. And you have to be willing to pull yourself in the now. And that's why we teach you to get beyond thought and emotions, to get you in the now more. That way these things can pass through you. Thoughts of that you have entanglements with, that are chains around your neck, emotions can pass through and you can detox them out and be free. And then it'll help the adrenals. A lot of times you work on the adrenals and work on the adrenal glands, but they're your emotional chakras, the astral chakras. And so sometimes that won't help them. You've got to release emotional things. Maybe you were, definitely traumatized in past lives at one level or another, and you have to release all those things. During a long process of growth, if you go the slow way, you could spend a lot of years releasing emotions and things like that. The more you pull yourself in the present moment, though, the less you'll be affected by those sort of things. And
I talk about this a lot with my clients. I meet with people now more for spiritual things, and my own intuition, where my guides or whomever leads me to is, the things that are hidden, like the emotions, the wounds that they're not even aware are wounds. And it's I'm able to see these things to bring out. And it's amazing because some people that have, are labeled autoimmune or chronic fatigue. When I bring all these stuff up to the surface and help them deal with it and work on it, all of a sudden it's I woke up and wasn't so tired this morning. Sure. And people don't realize that, you can't look at it this is what's physically going on, it's just physical. This is what's emotionally going on, it's just emotional. No, it's body, mind, spirit. It's all three of those things into one. And like you said earlier, depression was what the parathyroid you said, and they all work together. Where there was a childhood wound that caused the depression, but it's affecting the parathyroid, and it's all one thing. And I think if we can get to a point in the collective consciousness where we're looking at ourselves from we're a tripart being experiencing the world, healing can come at a better rate, and even preventing us from getting, because you really want to be in a prevention mode rather than we'll heal it when something bad happens.
Take a look at it this way, and I'm sure you're familiar with this whole saying. Are we physical beings having a spiritual experience, or are we spiritual beings having a physical experience? So I teach people, turn your perspective around. Don't be the human that looks up to God, be the God that looks down to the human state. In other words, become the now. And when you're in the now, you become conscious. And conscious means you're in the world of consciousness. There is no thought in consciousness. There is no desire in consciousness, the old Buddha, the desireless state. All these great giants spiritually have taught us, work in the present moment where there is no form, there is no presence of thought. You can send your mind to go do your things and watch thought, but if you the man's problem is he chases streams of thinking. So man just goes from one thought to another thought to another thought. And that's the problem. That's where your attention is. And I like it like a movie. You go to a movie, you get yourself into a movie house, you sit down, you're in the now. Then the movie comes on. You pulled yourself into the world of duality. Now you're into action, you're into duality, you're into form, you're into all kinds of activity and stuff. When the movie's over, that action stops, you pull yourself back, and now you're back in the movie theater. And the best directors will pull you out of that chair in the movie house and lose yourself into the movie. Pretty soon you wake up and you didn't realize you became the movie. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what working in the present moment is. It's waking, and you shift from your point of view instead of being the human looking to unfold spiritually and go through all these initiations and stuff to becoming the knower. And that's I had a lot of out-of-body travels going through this because, and that was the cool thing, is traveling in different worlds and out of your physical body into the astral body. But as I was working and having fun with this, there was this voice that kept saying to me, "Who's the traveler?" And it made me realize that I was looking at external and creation, that I have to look to the self. And you can't look at yourself. It's like my higher self. Well, who is your higher self? It's you. Mm-hmm. And there was a good movie put together by Bruce Lee called The Circle of Iron.
Oh, I love that movie.
Did you see that movie?
Oh, my God. I own that movie.
Oh, I do too.
The Magic Flute?
I'm telling you, the Magic Flute. But in the journey of unfoldment, he went to all these stages, right, of unfoldment. And when he finally found Zetan, when he finally found the ultimate, and he fought to read the book.
Don't give it away.
I won't give it away. And what did he find when he opened up the book?
That's right.
Exactly. And that's exactly what it is. Change your perspective, and you'll become the master.
When people that don't know that movie, at the beginning of the movie, it states that Bruce Lee was going to make this movie. He wrote the movie, thought of the movie, and he passed away. And David Carradine came into the role of the Bruce Lee character. And David Carradine plays maybe 5 different characters in that. And Cord is the lead, and he was a B-rated actor. And the way he looks physically, I look at him and I go, man, if I could just have half of his muscle. Yeah. And he's not a big guy, but he's a very healthy-looking guy. And I have, on my morning music, I have the Magic Flute, and that plays. And it's one of my favorite movies. And I can't believe you know it, but I'll reference that to other people, and they'll be like, I don't know what that is.
The journey to find truth.
Oh,
when in reality, you are truth.
Right.
You know, Jesus said you are the living truth. Right. What does that mean? You don't go seek it because you are it. And I've always said this, the seeker of truth never finds it because they're busy seeking what they already are.
I'm just discovering this.
Good stuff.
Yep.
I want to touch on when you're detoxing, you touched on this as far as going through the emotional aspect. And I don't think there's a lot of information out there about that, in books. Yeah. The ones that I've read, and I haven't read, every single one, but you do go through some emotion, some heavy emotion. Yeah, that's a big thing. Explain that and how you deal with that with your clients. I'm sure you tell your clients, hey.
Well, you're going to go through it at a certain level or not because the adrenal glands sit on top of the kidneys. They control metabolism. In other words, if you have you have low iron in your body, where do you go? You go to your adrenal glands because the metabolism of minerals, except for calcium, which is parathyroid, comes out of the adrenal glands. The metabolism of sugars comes out of the adrenal glands, but also neurotransmitters for the autonomic. That's where you get into anxieties, breathing problems is when that's down. But they sit on top of the kidneys, control that. So when you have those down, your blood pressure goes down on the top. And that's when you start having shortness of breath, but you get anxieties and you start having emotional frailties where people beat you up. You're the victim instead of gaining your power. And I'm into the woman warrior thing, and even the male warrior thing. You must own your journey because if you don't, you're a leaf blowing in the wind. Well, when you have weak adrenals, you feel a victim. And then the thyroid, parathyroid levels is your self-worth. That's how you see yourself. And that's, of course, all the mental causal worlds. Yep. And so once you become strong in the endocrine glands, you become strong in your tenacity and your strength and your emotional fortitudes. But then if you learn spiritually that you work in the now, it doesn't matter what weakness you have down below. You're always in the consciousness, and that weakness will not bother you or not touch you. But if you're not, then you're going to bump. But that then controls the lymphatic system, so we're always working on the adrenals. And the emotional component just comes out. Your emotional weakness. Let's put it this way. Detoxification exposes your weaknesses, whether it's genetic tissue, whether it's emotional or thoughts. You just detox and suddenly you're healthy. It exposes, it shows you your weaknesses, and that includes physical, and then it heals them.
You go through that process, and you're going to get, not necessarily weaker, but it'll show you as a mirror, hey.
Yeah, you could go one day and you got pain in the knee. You go, what's doing that? And then you look in the eye and there's degeneration in the knee. And then it moves and then it's the shoulder or then it's the liver or it's that. It exposes weaknesses before it gets rid of them. It says, here, take a look. Mm-hmm. And you can correlate that with the eye really cool. We do that all the time. I always tell them this is what you're going to experience, man. Or a throat is, if I see weakness in a throat, you're going to end up with a sore throat, bro. Because it's just, that's what detox is and people just don't understand it that way.
Do you have to constantly be detoxing your entire life? And talk about that a little bit. And what do you think about, is detoxing also, does fasting come into that? Intermittent fasting come into that?
Yeah, just eating raw foods, your body's going to go through cleansing and rebuilding. And it'll be a process that's forever because it's an ongoing process. I would say in today's world, man's lymphatic system is so bad and genetics are so bad, it's going to be a few generations down the way before we get that out of us, if man catches on to what we're doing here. But if he doesn't, then the decay of the human cell is so bad because of medical thinking that it's at the level now that children are born with cells at the cancer level. So this is part of the problem, the decay of the human cell. But we're into regeneration. So we have tons of parents out there putting their children on fruits and berries and melons, and they're coming out of this. And they're rebuilding their structures, they're strengthening their genetic weaknesses, they're cleaning their lymph system. So we're actually increasing the integrity of the human cell. And I think it'll take time for that to happen, and work that out.
And so to touch on, what are your thoughts on fasting?
Well, I think fasting is the best way to go. I mean, nature is a faster. If you get sick in nature, it's going to fast you. You lose your hunger. And if you keep fighting that when you're really sick, it'll take you down to the level of fasting. Some of our highly involved, emaciated people are down to the level of fasting. Well, we can't have that because they're so emaciated and so acidic, it'll take you on out.
Gotcha.
So we work with that. I'll say this. I learned a lot over the last 15 years of YouTube or whatever, but dry fasting is a way to get the kidneys to filter when nothing else will do it. And that means going 24 or 36 hours, not doing anything, water or anything. I'll give you a case. I had this guy, his parachute didn't open, so he hit the water at about 90 miles an hour. And so he was a quad from all that. Well, we rebuilt him about a year, and now he's all running and having a life. But he did a 12-day a dry fast, and the stuff in his urine was so gnarly, I couldn't even believe it was urine. But this is a guy whose parachute didn't open. Lucky he was alive, and we pulled him out of that and rebuilt him. And that's what regeneration is all about. Seriously, is taking you from a decrepit, emaciated state and rebuilding yourself.
When I was studying in one of the classes that I was taking on nutrition, they shared a story about this guy who he went to a clinic to do a water detox, and it was like on day, I want to say it was like on day 40. It was something really high. All of a sudden, some kind of crazy chemical came out in his urine. Where does it store so deep in the body that it took 45 days of straight water to get it out? Lymphatic. There's
only two fluids to store anything, because all you have is cells, the spaces around them, and the two fluids that occupy. You get water, but that's edemic changes actually, and that comes to play when when that area is too acidic. But it's only because water is the universal solvent. So it's just trying to help break up that agglomulation. But in reality, the body only has two major fluids, blood and lymph. So when you see storage, the blood gets rid of what it can't. It gets rid of what it doesn't need or can't use because it protects itself. Because if it gets acidic, you're a dead duck. So it uses the spleen to clean itself. So the lymph system is the storage place. And the University of West Virginia, this is interesting stuff, when they discovered the lymphatic system in the brain, they claimed that the lymph system, the lymph vessels, piggybacked the blood vessels. So through osmosis or a magnetic draw, are we pulling from the blood some of these proteins or chemicals into the lymph system? There's so much out there yet to unfold and understand that we're in infantile stages, really.
So would heavy metals work the same way?
Same way. Oh yeah, that's another problem though. Is storage of heavy metals are in the lymph. That's why you do the hair analysis. But oh yeah, you can store toxic chemicals in the and then when you start moving lymph, oh yeah, sulfurs is a big one. Sulfur storage is major in people from all the sulfa drugs, the medical doctors, penicillin. It's a major problem. And I talk about a fungal proliferant. So sulfur is a gassy, bloaty. It turns the eye orange. It causes gastric distress. It's horrible. And it stays in you. That's how Charles Goodyear finally got his rubber substance to harden with sulfa drugs.
So you've mentioned water. And we have all heard about the 8 glasses a day.
Yeah.
Where did that...
That's ridiculous.
Is that a fallacy?
That is a big fallacy.
Okay.
Matter of fact, we have some people with lung cancer. If you do 8 glasses of water a day, you'll go on out.
Oh,
because
wow.
your lung will fill up with so much water, and you can, we send people to the hospital to get aspirated, of course, but you can't do that. When you're so acidic, we talked about that earlier, about the girl that I was telling you about, that she gains 5 to 10 pounds just taking a shower.
Before we came on the air, because I was talking about my issues with weight and the diet, and Dr. Morse was saying that he had a client who would take a shower and put on 5 pounds
only
of
about
water
17,
weight.
18 years old.
Water weight.
Water weight.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem. Some people will gain weight going on raw foods, and you're going, and they would yell at me, I go on raw and lose weight, and now I gain 10 pounds. I said, stop and think how dehydrated you are. That's water weight. That's edemic weight. And then once you get the kidneys filtering, you start hydrating, you reach get that balance there, that everything just starts coming out, and then everything goes down. You feel the difference. But you can, so when you're going after lung cancer as a practitioner, you have to be very careful with that.
So what I'm understanding with the hydration, and you do the water, your body is basically soaking that up, going, we need it. Okay, we're going to hold on to this.
Remember, the water is the universal solvent. That's why you wash our hands with it, and it's a minor acid initially. It only becomes alkaline because of the minerals from springs and mountains and things like that. So, but it's a universal solvent, so you can see why the body is trying to bring it into itself to act as a solvent. Because when you have stagnation or agglomulation, that's an acidosis. That's when you feel stiff and tight. If you don't remedy that, then the cells is the next point.
When people come in my shop and they have like water retention, the doctor puts them on like water pills, and it's like your body's retaining water because it's dehydrated, and now you're taking a pill that's going to force water out of your system. Yeah, I'm like, it's going to make it worse. Yep.
It's all kidney failure. And they have to, and it's all kidney failure, which leads to acidosis. Because when the kidneys quit filtering, that starts a chain of events. You might see a little ovarian cyst up and down, lumps, humps, things like this, boils, pimples, things like that. But in the long run, you're in trouble.
Have you ever come across, I don't know the technical term, the seasonal disorder issue? Is that
Okay, think about this. I'm glad you brought that up because this is interesting. I'm from Indiana originally, right?
Am I getting the term right? Is that
well, yeah, you can solve that. Seasonal allergies and everything like that. So think about this. Acids are hot. Alkalis or base chemistry is cold. Mm-hmm. So when you look at alkaline chemistry, it hydrates. It's anionic. It hydrates. It breaks up hardened things. It breaks up acids. It through anionic, it neutralizes, right, and brings in the. So when the weather gets cold, you start going into a detoxification state, an anionic state. So if you're a milk drinker like most Northerners are and all this, you got mucus in the sinuses and the lungs and the bronchial trunk. What are you going to see? Cold and flu-like symptoms, bronchitis, pneumonias. This is just the body expelling mucus. Why? You got into the cold. You start alkalizing yourself. You see those same symptoms when you detoxify. You can be in Florida, go on a raw food diet, and pretty soon you have a cold and flu-like symptom. What did I catch? You didn't catch nothing. Mm-hmm. They used to blame pneumonia on pneumococcus. But then they found out that 50% or more of pneumonia didn't even have pneumococcus present. So now they have a pneumococcus pneumonia and a non-pneumococcus pneumonia. I mean, it's just stupidity on top of stupidity. So
when you go through that quote-unquote cold, you're basically, your body's purging.
Detoxing. Yeah, you're getting rid of the mucus because the mucosa is part of the lymphatic system. The mucosa lines your mouth, it lines your nose, it lines your GI tract. That produces mucus. Mucus is how the body protects itself against acid damage and proteins. So anytime you see like mucoid plaque or amyloid plaque in brain that they blame on Alzheimer's, that's just the body's response to acids, to proteins. And that's what you see. So dairy proteins are the most mucus-forming proteins on the planet. So you get the talking like this when you have too much milk products or cheeses, right? And you get congestion in the lungs and the bronchi. The body's going to clean it out. So the medical doctors, not knowing and understanding that, call that a disease, and then they try to treat it. Well, that's what kills people. Can't do it.
Where can people find you other than, your YouTube channel with your great...
flying in the air around sometimes.
I'll see you on the astroplane.
Well, I tell you what, if you look to your dreams, we're there a lot.
Are you flying through the snow globe with the issues in there? The backup system.
I like to work on the inner planes a lot, but if they really want to, it's Robert Morse ND YouTube. Or then they can come to the Dr. Morse's Herbal Health Club.com.
Okay.
Yeah. So one's a club. The YouTube site is my educational site. I have my own school, so I teach everybody how simple health is and understand this ridiculous concept of disease and how to get yourself well.
And you can do that through anywhere in the world, right?
I can teach a kid how to do it.
Right, but you can do it anywhere.
Anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the world. That's the fun part of it.
Yeah, so you can go to the webpage and find
Drives medical doctors nuts. Especially if you spent 10 years at college to get a degree and spend all that money and you still don't know what causes anything.
So on your webpage or on the YouTube, does it have on the iridology how to take a picture so they can get it to you, yes?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Or they can call the club and then they we tell you. But it's easy to do that. You get a light and point it at a 45-degree angle at your eye and have someone with a cell phone. A nice cell phone. Cameras are nice nowadays. It takes a nice picture. You want the colored portion, the iris.
Right.
Yep.
And that's what you're focusing on.
And you have a nice 5-color glossy, and we can take a look at that and show you what's going on.
Well, Dr. Robert Morse and Circle of Iron fan, we are
I'm a big Circle of Iron fan.
Absolutely.
Bruce Lee had an awareness that few people understand, and that movie shows that, like you said, the ultimate find when you finally found the Z-tan, or you find the ultimate, what did you really find?
That's right, the ultimate answer.
The ultimate answer of life.
Not the same chord.
Not the same chord. Or how many times.
That's right.
And so it is.
The Mystical Emergence Podcast.
The claims, information, or opinions heard on the Mystical Emergence Podcast should never be used in place of your medical provider's advice or your doctor's direction. We have some of the best doctors on the planet, and you should always consult them with all health issues you might be experiencing. Thanks for listening.